Welcome to The Introvert Sisters, the podcast by introverts for introverts, hosted by Sharon and Lisa, two INFJs with a lot to say.
Hi, I'm Sharon.
And I'm Lisa.
And together,
we're the Introvert Sisters.
Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to our podcast.
Oh, you seem very...
I'm dancing. I have on my kente cloth, so I am feeling overjoyed. Yes.
Full on African heritage mode, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
So, sis, you know what I'm going to ask, right?
What are you going to ask?
Wagwan.
Oh my gosh.
What is happening? What's going on? What's going on in your world? Like how is summer going? How is the second summer of COVID?
Boy, that's a thing.
Second summer of COVID. Right,
that is such a thing. We imagine that when we started this podcast, COVID was a brand new thing that we were still adjusting to. And here we are heading hard into year 2. Right? That doesn't actually even bear thinking about. Okay, so what's going on in my world in terms of summer is, there's been a spike in cases. We have an evening curfew back on.
Like till what time?
11 to 5. It's not too bad. I mean, I tend to be home anyway as an introvert, so honestly, it doesn't really affect my life.
You're like, so just life.
Time I was going to be home anyway, yes. It actually only makes a difference if I go liming with the girls.
Right.
Because those conversations can go till 1 a.m. But, we adjust like everybody does. You start your evening a little earlier. You start at 6 instead of 8, and then everybody leaves by 10:30 to make sure that they're home. Right. I mean, Barbados is a small island. So, most places it's not going to take you more than half an hour to get home unless you're traveling from St. Lucie to St. Philip. Right. For those who don't know, that's from the north of the island to the south of the island. Okay. Apart from that, what else is happening? Well, my daughter is back home for the summer. But that is always a finite thing. And, the empty nest is on the horizon again. So, it's great to have her home. Really love that.
Yeah.
Having some great
have you guys, I was just going to ask, have you guys been doing stuff or?
Well, what? COVID time. So, what we tend to do is, one of our favorite things to do is to just go and have coffee and chat, right? There's a coffee shop 5 minutes away. So we go and do that, I would say at least once a week, sometimes twice, depending on what else is happening. And it's really just a change of scene for the same conversation, because it's not like we don't sit on the couch and have those same conversations,
Yeah, but sometimes you want ambiance.
Right. So, so we've been doing that. And then apart from that, I don't know. I don't really know what else is happening. I mean, she will be off to university again in a couple of months, and we'll have the whole empty nest thing again. But, I guess in some ways it gets easier, and I think she's going to be happy, she's going to be settled, and so that is good. So what about you? What is your summer looking like in these COVID times, and what's new with you? First of all, I see that you have changed your background. Tell me about that.
I have. Okay, so like many people around the world, like backgrounds, virtual backgrounds or folding screens and room dividers have become a thing because everybody's home and trying to section off space to do work in.
Yeah. Okay,
so I had gotten a screen, beautiful screen, and I have having grown up in the Caribbean, it's like I have a thing for heavy dark furniture, and I was trying to not do that again. Right? You understand. Anybody who is West Indian understands exactly what I mean, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, the mahogany.
Bare mahogany and up in the place, right? Yes. So I got a beautiful white lattice work screen, which is lovely. Forgetting my video training and that having that behind me, and trying to deal with the contrast between it and my skin and the light and everything, would not work. And so that did not work the background. So it's now elsewhere in my house. Beautiful, but not functional for what I got it for. And then you and I were using the virtual backgrounds, which were great until I changed my hair. And I discovered that you can't see it normally, but like you see even just like this like bit of skin hair or just like this gap here or whatever, which looks it looks perfectly fine now, but on a virtual background, it looks
kind of weird.
It not only does it look weird, but you see bits of what you're trying to hide.
Well, that is the nature of virtual backgrounds. It is true.
Right. So I'm like, okay. So I tried a couple of times. It looked really ridiculous. I'm like, okay, this means I need another screen. But I learned, I got a nice dark one, and so that is, and I kind of am in love
looks
with it.
Good, and the fluffy white cushions or throws, I'm not sure what they are on either side, give a nice contrast to your skin, so it enables you to benefit from that lightness without having it overwhelm the whole video, right?
Exactly. We have like some texture going on there. Actually, there's some books behind me, but of course.
That's good. I thought I didn't realize it had a shelf. And I said, actually, because it has some little plants there, I see as well.
There's actually, I don't know if you can see, there's another shelf up there.
Oh, I can't see the top one.
Yeah, it's supposed to be further down, but
no, it's actually perfect. It's funny. I remember you doing your MA in music business, and I remember you doing your video training. And and it's funny how all those things always come back. You always take things away from that, from those credentials that come back and that you can use. I find the same, I think in the last episode, I talked about becoming diversity team lead for Omnis. But, that is bringing together my journalism and writing training, my educational background, my personal interests, all sorts of things, my media and culture, MA, my education, MA, it's like all those things come together, so I always find that a very interesting thing, the whole circularity of life,
Yeah, because and that's why, your parents raise you and say, get an education is the one thing that they can't take from you, which is kind of like sad to even be thinking that people are coming to rob you of things. But
my God,
hey,
well, yes, again,
as descendants of enslaved people, we know exactly where they were coming from. But they really can't. Nobody can take it from you. It does stay with you, and it shows up, as you said, at the most surprising times, in the most delightful. And you're like, oh, I know how to do this. Or, I can take this and change it slightly and, draw on my training. So it's wonderful.
Exactly. It's not, knowledge is not wasted. It's never wasted. Yeah. I think, continuing to learn is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself.
Yes. Every now and then, speaking of which, every now and then I'm like really tempted to go and do a doctorate.
Me too.
Then I remember, right?
Oh my gosh.
But money. So somebody please give me a scholarship, right?
But yes,
I can't.
It's gonna have to be funded.
But money, and also I'm like, I remember the last month
of your masters.
Oh girl.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, this is not cute. This is not cute at all.
I know, but it is still sometimes tempting, though. It does come back to mind every so often, and it's been coming up for me actually recently, because I'm thinking of doing an update to my shadism book. I've actually started working with someone about how we can sort out the data, and also started to reframe the new questionnaire.
Right. Oh, excellent.
And so
it's because of the work.
Yeah,
it's because of the work that we've been doing. Not surprised to hear you say that it came up because of your book.
And that's probably why it came up for you as well, because you've been obviously active in this space in the last year, and
Yes.
I think we found our thing, sis.
I think we have found our thing. And it's interesting to see how it's playing out.
And what's also interesting to me is that yet again we have independently come to the same sort of conclusion, gone down the same path. I mean, you and I never discussed when we were children that we were going to be writers.
Nope.
Never.
Actually, it never once came up.
No,
Ever.
no. We were readers, yes, but it
Yeah.
never came up. It's kind of like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm working as a journalist. What are you doing? Oh, I'm working or as a marketing copywriter. Wow. Well, what are the odds?
Yeah.
And so I always find it very interesting when we end up being on the same wavelength without having planned it, But
Kinda
I guess,
cool.
as a sisterhood thing, probably.
I think it's a
In
sisterhood
part.
thing, and we have that thing that I have heard twins say that they have. We're born 4 years apart, but for that slight detail.
But for that slight detail, we're quite tuned in.
We're very tuned in with each other. I remember once you had been living in England for a while, and I think it was the first time I came to visit you, and so we were like doing a big catch up. And when we compared notes, right, it was like, we had sort of been living very similar lives in two parallel universes, parallel tracks.
Actually,
right?
And wasn't it down to like we had both hurt our left knee at the same time?
At the same time, in the same place. The scar looks very similar. Like it was kind of spooky. Very spooky,
Very, very spooky.
But in a weird but delightful way.
Yes, it's kind of weirdly comforting at the same time as being spooky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
So but you had actually asked me, now that I remember, what's going on with my summer. And the great thing is it's a very short answer. I'm not doing anything.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm not doing anything. All I'm doing is training myself to return to the office. I did have one day recently where I went back just to kind of, feel it out, and it was like a half day.
Yeah.
My boss said, don't make it a thing. This is like literally just test it out, get, see how the commute goes, see how you feel, start getting used to the office. So we treated it as such, right? So I spent maybe half day in the office, and a couple 2.5 hours commuting, right?
Wow, the commute though.
2 to 2.5 hours, yeah, girl. I'm like, y'all. And then
can we keep this remote? Can we keep this remote, please?
Went and did the same thing in the office I've been doing at home for a year now. But fine, whatever. It is what it is. But girl, the exhaustion. And what was interesting, because I was like, okay, girl, like you're getting up there in age, so maybe you're just like old and tired, right? And getting decrepit. What was funny was that me and one of my colleagues, who I believe to be in their 20s, could be wrong, but significantly younger than I am for sure. And we were leaving at the same time, and both got into the elevator and each let out a huge, like, belly deep yawn. Right? And then looked at each other and laughed, because we were like, oh my gosh.
What has happened?
He's like, right there, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. And we were like, what is that? And he, he lives closer to the office, but it's like, you have to train for this like a marathon. You have to build your tolerance up.
Is the idea that you're all going to have to go back eventually, or are they going to do part remote, or what are they going to do?
It's a hybrid, it's a hybrid model, and I call it hybrid 2.5 as opposed to hybrid 3.2. I'm calling it hybrid 2.5 because due to the capacity limits, floor space capacity limits, and people limits, we can't have everybody in the office every Friday. I don't even fully understand it. Anyway, point is, it's going to be Monday, Wednesday. So, people are going to be like red dot people are going to be Monday, Wednesday. Green dot people are going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and then we're going to alternate every other Friday.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess it's better than having to be there full time.
It's better than having to be there full time. It is for my role, and this is nothing against the company. This is I mean, I have made my stance clear.
But you don't need to be in the office, right?
LinkedIn. I do not need to be in the office. And what was interesting was I have photophobia, so that's why even here at home, I'm in my sunglasses. So just imagine beautiful building, great views of the Manhattan skyline, but with the great views come huge, wide open, windows. And so
Yeah.
the glare, like I ended
too
up
much
with
for
a
you.
migraine. It's just too much, right?
Wow.
So there was the glare. Then the interesting thing is, of course, we're still kind of doing meetings in Teams on our laptops, right? And so, sitting close enough to people that, if we're in the same meeting, there's like, a horrible echo. And so one of you has to move, right? So of course I moved to one of those nice little individual pods. You remember those pods?
Yes, we've talked about those pods before.
But I'm like, right. So I'm like, okay, so here I am in my own space, like if I was in my house. Okay. If this logic is working for you guys, that's fine.
Okay, I guess we'll see. But actually, that is a nice segue into remote communication. And, my question is, are you textroverted? Because we've often talked, right, about having.
What is that? What's that mean?
I'm going to talk. I am going to talk about that because, I think a lot of us fake extroversion in our text messages, in our, our Slack messages, emails, and so on, and our emails. And we often talked about having to fake introversion to get by in an extroverted world. And I think that can happen even when you're working remotely, even when you're communicating by text. Because, remote communication is often over communication. So what happened is I was writing a message the other day, and it occurred to me that in writing that message, I came across as far more extroverted than I actually am. Now, I'm not, this enthusiasm is not totally fake because I'm really relieved not to have to be in an office. But I'm pretty sure that I'm not that peppy face to face. Right? So,
sis.
Yeah.
I would describe you as many things.
But
and though you have peppy moments, I don't think I would describe you as peppy. No.
No, I'm not at all peppy. I'm not at all peppy. That's not my thing. No. So the thing is, I think textroversion works because it can be hard to convey emotion and reactions in plain text. And sometimes the unvarnished message can come across like you're not interested, like you don't care, like you feel angry, similar to our RBF that we often have as introverts. It's like the text version of RBF, right? So let us think about, here are some of the ways that we actually counter that in our text messages, right? So, do you want to start with, how do we look extroverted, textroverted?
Well, and I'm glad that you put a name. You gave this a name. I don't know if you've coined the phrase, but I'm going to claim that you did. But but it certainly is a real thing now that you've brought it to my attention. And I use exclamation points, a lot of them. I don't want to be that person, but I do realize that sometimes I write something and I end it with a period because I came up, in the days of grammar.
Yes. The good old days, the good old bad old days. Did you know, sidebar, did you know that, for younger people, putting a period at the end of your text message comes across as if you're being snippy? Or if you're having an attitude.
This is where I was going.
Right.
This is where I was going. And so having learned that, and sometimes even reading it back, you're like, yes, thank you. Yes, comma, thank you, period. And I'm like, I'm happy with that. And then I read it and I think that might come across like sarcastic,
Yes.
Like if there's a subtext to it, like instead of, yes, could you please, thanks, I appreciate it. It could come across as like, why didn't you do it in the first place? Which might be the case. But anyway, fine, whatever. No, but so yes, a lot of exclamation points. There's one person on Slack who uses a lot of emojis. They're into hearts and whatever. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'll heart back. I will heart back. I'll emoji back. I'll do the little
they can
banana
add
dance
emotion,
emoji.
they can add emotion, right?
Yes,
That
I
is
do
what they
that.
do.
Yes, and also I think British English and British/Barbadian English and US English are different animals altogether.
Oh, yes.
And so, but I've been living in the States for, I don't know, like 20, I don't know how long, but a long time, right?
Mhm.
So words like, that's amazing, that's awesome, I'm pumped, OMG, right?
I'm stoked.
That's so stoked, right? That is not that is not how I grew up speaking. And it comes more naturally now, but I had to train myself to sort of mirror that kind of linguistic enthusiasm.
I like that word, linguistic enthusiasm. Textroversion is linguistic enthusiasm.
It is. And
I love it.
Because people will respond to you differently,
They
right?
will.
And also bear in mind that sometimes, honestly, if we're honest, sometimes we're on the receiving end of something that doesn't have the emojis and ends now that we know, and ends in a period or a full stop, and we're like,
what do they actually mean?
Attitude? What do they mean?
Yeah.
So
yes.
So you're aware of it now. You become aware, and then you're like, okay, I don't want to do that to someone else.
And the weird thing is that, there's like another school of thought that says, don't use emoji, it's unprofessional. But honestly, if you don't use them, people can't tell.
Right.
You can't always tell where your head is. So sometimes you need to put in a smile, a wry smile, a laugh, the tears of joy, or whatever it happens to be, a heart. Sometimes you need to use a reaction, basically, right? You need to
because you look, like it or not, and this is the beauty, actually, language, right? And now over the past, I guess, couple of decade plus, right?
Yeah.
Emojis have become a thing, and now it's
they're everywhere.
They are part of the international lexicon.
Absolutely.
And your communication is not as complete and as nuanced and as rich without them, because this is now the expectation. They are part of international language, right? No, and that's that again. That's the beauty of them, because they're images, because they're symbols. They transcend language, right? So even if you can't speak Russian,
yes,
for example, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows what a smiley face is, though.
Yes.
But you don't need to speak a language to
still have to understand local norms for some symbols. There's some, for example, I'm sure that there are countries in which a thumbs up is a bad thing. And I can't remember which ones they are.
Absolutely.
Right. So you have to be careful in choosing your emoji. But if you know that you're speaking to people that are within your language group, and that there's a mutual understanding of what certain things mean, then you can use those emoji within that group. Right. And sometimes they can substitute for a written response. If somebody says whatever they happen to say, you can use a tick to show that you agree, without having to formulate something, right?
Yes, but then because also there's also the concern that there's so much communication, right? There's so many platforms, so much communication, and even just professionally, you have your Microsoft Teams and your, I don't know if Google Chat is still, Zoom, I have no idea. You have your Teams, Zoom, Meet,
and then all your Slack, all of these
email.
Have, you have multiple places to chat with people, multiple places to video chat with people. There are a lot.
Sometimes, listen, all I have for you is a thumbs up. That's all I got. It's 6 o'clock. I don't have a full sentence anymore.
And that's where being introverted really tells, because there's a point at which, it's funny because you would think, you're home and so on, but you're still socializing, you're still interacting with people. And so you still get that same exhaustion after a certain after a certain time, okay, fine,
Yeah.
you're not in the office or you're not in a party or you're not in a whatever, but you're on, if you have we've talked about this before, you have a day of Zoom meetings or you have a day of extended text conversations with people, you feel that exhaustion that you feel from being in a social setting. And let me just say, while we're on the subject of text conversations, one of the things that you have to do is over communicate. You have to not assume that people
explain,
not expect that people are going to understand your 2-word reply and understand what you mean with it. Sometimes you have to actually spell out what you mean and add a couple of enthusiastic words, emoji, and exclamation points just to make sure that people know that you're smiling and that you're enthusiastic and that you're not just sitting there saying, oh my God, what does this person want now? And rolling your eyes, right?
Yeah. I use, and I've even started now to do it on LinkedIn, and even up to probably, let's say, a couple of months ago, there is no way I would use emojis on LinkedIn. But now it's like, especially since, side note, they need to update their reaction.
They do.
What? Okay. Side note, because some of this stuff we need an eye roll, we need a whatever that thing is with the eyes, with the this.
Yes.
That expression.
Yes. The spring face.
Spring face.
I always think of it as spring face.
It is spring face. That's an inside joke, guys. Long story. We'll tell you what that is about at some point. But yeah, so they need an eye roll. They need that other reaction.
Because
they need a laugh reaction. But because they don't have those.
Yeah.
I've started using emojis on LinkedIn to respond to people, and I say things like "Yay!" like, and even as I do it, I'm like, oh, but
yeah, I know.
Textroversion
again, and and here's the thing. Also, there was a point at which you would have a whole message and you would stick a single emoji at the end of it. Right now, it's like you seed them in and out where they're appropriate. Right, because again, that says to people, okay, you can use the same sentence, and one of them you can be being sarcastic, one of them you can be rolling your eyes, another one you can be being genuinely happy, and so the emoji that you choose makes a difference. So
it's a signal. It's a signal. It adds nuance and layers of meaning.
It is, as you said, it's part of our lexicon now. So I think as introverts, we need to also learn this lexicon of textroversion. And
emojis are our friends.
Yes, and exclamation points. And if you want to throw in an awesome, amazing, or pumped, go right ahead.
So here's a question. Here's a question for you, actually, because I know I basically deal with kind of like US only, but I know you are sort of maybe split between US and UK in terms of the form of English that you use and the clients, the origin of your clientele. So is there a difference in the amount of textroversion required based on country or culture?
The younger people are, the more emoji they use naturally.
Yes,
I think.
Yes.
I am not so sure that I can tell. I mean, let's start with the fact that, most of the people I'm working with are younger than I am, for the most part.
True. Yes. Yeah.
So for people who are older or the same age, many of them don't use emoji at all. Certainly not in emails, right? Certainly not in emails. But for the people that I'm on Slack with who span age groups between, I say, mid-20s to mid-40s, I think it comes naturally to many of them to include a few emoji. I think the older you are, the fewer you tend to include. But I also think that where people are aware of the need to give that nuance, they do include them as part of good remote communication, rather than necessarily any natural inclination to do so.
Right.
Textroversion, again.
Question for you. I noticed just now you used emoji as the plural. And so,
Oh.
is it emojis or emoji?
I think that is my language training, because I suspect that
She's so fancy. Look at her saying emoji is a plural.
I suspect that the plural is actually emojis, right? But it doesn't come naturally to me because my language training tells me that emoji is both a singular and a plural.
Yes. Well, no, I
Like
think let's take
You know?
let's take it to the fullest extent. I think I'm using one emojis and more than one emoji.
Emojis is not a thing.
Listen,
But it's not.
you best believe I'm going to be texting you and saying, "Hey sis, do you like this emojis?" You better respond. I'm going to be sending you one at a time. Emojis.
So yes.
All right, we've clearly studied too much Latin. Okay.
Clearly. So then, is it a bad thing to fake extroversion in your text messages?
No,
Does it feel like a betrayal of your inner introvert?
There are yes and no. There are times where I'm like, okay, this is not how I would respond with somebody that I think actually knew me.
Mm-hmm.
But it is useful to respond this way because they don't know me, and so they need this extra layer of meaning. So they know I'm not upset, I'm not angry, I'm not trying to be mean. I need this additional context. I need these layers of meaning. I need all this nuance.
It's kind of
in order to make sort of grease the wheels of communication and collaboration.
Yes, I mean, emoji often substitute for body language.
Yeah.
Right? Because, when we are face to face, and I'm not talking on a Zoom screen, there's a lot of nuance in the non-verbal communication. And I think that emoji help us to do that. And obviously, and I think everybody needs that. Everybody needs that.
Yeah. So I don't know that it's a betrayal of my introvert. There are times where I definitely feel like, ugh.
Yeah.
But as I like anything cute, right? Emojis are adorable, right? And so from that perspective, for me, the more the merrier. I remember years ago you telling me like you are really like you are the emoji queen, because I would find the perfect, in fact, like 5 or 6, couldn't just be one, right?
Yes.
But they're cute, they're adorable, and they bring a smile to people's faces, and I don't see that anything can be wrong with that, right?
They do. So they're a key part.
Do you feel that? Sorry, go ahead.
So they're a key part of Textroversion.
Yes. And do you feel like you are betraying your inner introvert? Not inner introvert, your introvert.
Sometimes I think the same as you said, there are times when I feel, okay, was that a little too peppy? Because, I'm not necessarily, as I said, I'm not peppy. That's not my, I can be happy without being peppy, if you see what I mean. Right? And
I know exactly what you mean.
And so sometimes things come across peppier than feels natural to me.
Right.
But I'm a writer and a communicator, as are you. And so it's all about, does adding an exclamation point, a couple of emojis, does that make it easier to convey the meaning that is in my head and make it easier for the message to be received properly on the other end?
Right.
Because it's about communicating successfully and smoothly. And if that means a couple extra exclamation points and a couple of emojis, then I'm prepared to do it.
So be it.
All right.
So be it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope.
All right, so smiley face,
laughing with tears of joy. And please catch us on the next episode. We're the Introvert Sisters. Thank you so much for listening, and bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Introvert Sisters. Loved what you heard? You can catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major platforms. Subscribe, rate, and write a review. Find us online at theintrovertsisters.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Introvert Sisters. See you next time. Peace.